Let's go to our Canadian expert, David Freiheit, also known as the Viva Fry on Twitter. What do you have for us today, David?
Well, back to the destruction of the universe as we know it, or at least of my country as I know it. We were talking before the show, and Yana asked me, like, how long has Trudeau been in power for? It feels like forever. I was like, it's been the longest, most destructive 8 years in Canadian history.
That's it?
8
It's
years.
only been 8 years.
2015.
Wow.
2015, he was elected. Beautiful hair. This picture is an old picture. Oh, for not looking at it. The one with his facial hair, that was his COVID beard.
Of course.
He's now gone back to the clean shaven. He's the man of many faces, some of which are darker than
Fidel.
others.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Fidel
Castro.
He belongs in Game of Thrones.
Well, you all obviously know the meme that he's, or the rumor that he's Fidel Castro's son, because his mom was a
got around.
So elected 2015.
She was a Jada Pinkett Smith.
Well, it's a known fact. They had the parents were philanderers, the both of them, and there's a picture of Fidel Castro looking lovingly. I think it's not Justin Trudeau in that picture, but his brother. But either way, what was his mother's name? Margaret Trudeau?
Yeah.
There's a picture of Margaret with Fidel, and Fidel looking at one of those Trudeau babies, the way you don't look at anyone who's not your own baby. Elected 2015. When he got elected, there was a Huffington Post article, an op-ed that said, Canada is going to take a turn for the tyranny under Trudeau. Very prescient, and it has. So in the last 8 years, he's been elected 2015, 2019, 2021. In 2021, with like a minority, like 22% of the collective vote, he's got a minority government, but he's got something of a partnership with the NDP, the New Democrat Party, to keep him in power. But under Trudeau, you have talked recently, I guess, about the standing ovation for the Nazi soldier that was invited to Parliament when Zelensky was coming around Canada asking for more money to fund the war in Ukraine. 2 standing ovations for a hero, this is their word, who fought the Soviets valiantly for Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like within 12 hours, people on the internet like, wait, if he fought the Allies in World War II, who was he fighting that for? And yeah, he was a member of the SS Galicia out of Ukraine. The SS, worse Nazis than the Nazis, if you can imagine that. International debacle under Trudeau, 2 ethics violations for 2 issues, one of which was taking gifts from the Aga Khan Foundation that was petitioning the government for money and getting it. 2nd ethics violation for firing the Minister of Justice and Attorney General who would not adhere to his corrupt demands not to prosecute a company that he was chummy with. And then more recently, passing these laws, the Online Streaming Act, the Link Tax Act, which has now basically turned Canada into a censorship-ridden hermit kingdom. And he did it without a war. It's fantastic. He's censored the internet, stifled free speech in Canada, violently suppressed the most peaceful protest ever, the Ottawa trucker protest that I documented for 13 days.
It took their money away too, right?
Froze their bank accounts.
And people who donated to it, right? People who donated to the cause, they got their bank accounts frozen?
It didn't go quite that far, but those who organized the convoy and those who participated, some of the truckers who were there, bank accounts frozen. They raised, during that protest, for anybody who didn't know, I was there live streaming like 5-6 hours a day for 12 or 13 days. The GoFundMe, which I now refer to as Go F Me, they had raised over $10 million. Then the government seized it and said, the government seized a portion of it. GoFundMe said, we can't disperse these funds because it's being used for criminality. So we're going to donate it to a charity of our choice.
That's insane.
And then it was like, no, you're not, because that would be fraud. And then GoFundMe said, okay, we're not going to donate it unilaterally to a charity of our choice. We're going to reimburse it to those who ask for a reimbursement. And whatever's left, we'll donate to a charity of the trucker's choice. And they're like, no, we're all going to file credit card contestations. So they reimbursed it to everybody. Then they raised another $10 million with the only charity that anybody should use, Give, Send, Go. And they raised $10 million there, but because they got sued with a class action lawsuit, all sorts of Mariva injunctions like seizure of assets, Give, Send, Go said, we can't even disperse this funds in accordance with the promise of the campaign, so we reimbursed it to everybody. Nuts. So this is Canada under Trudeau. It's been turned into a lockdowns, frozen bank accounts, suppression of free speech on the internet, total censorship, and a lot of Canadians are like, we're good with this. It's for.
He's got a nice
Most of
smile.
them are?
I mean, look at that smile. How could you not?
Most of them are for Trudeau. Are they aware of all this?
They are aware but uninterested, or aware but think it's for the greater good type indoctrination. Too many Canadians are okay with it. There are a lot who are not.
Or do you think it's where Canada is now headed towards, where China is headed, that if you go against your government, you get thrown to camp, buddy? And I think that's what's also scary about Canada too is they're starting to have more camps pop up where people are disappearing. Am I right or am I wrong?
I'll say right and wrong. That might be more of an exaggeration. But during COVID, for example, they didn't make camps. What they did was, you see, they took hotels and they redesignated them as quarantine facilities, and they called them government-designated quarantine facilities. And so when you'd cross the border, you had to go into 2 weeks of quarantine, even if you were a woman taken from your family, not allowed to. This happened. I forget her name now. I'm not going to remember it in time. Darn it. This actually, people were taken to these government-designated quarantine facilities, denied counsel, which was deemed unconstitutional, though the quarantine facility was deemed not a violation of charter rights. There were sexual assaults in these units. But then, I'm from Quebec. We were placed on curfew for 5.5 months. Couldn't leave our house after 8 o'clock at night until 5 or 6 in the morning for 5.5 months.
Now, is that because the COVID is more catchable between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m.?
No hockey for kids. It was all so stupid.
No Labatt's blue after 8, right?
They were preventing people from playing hockey on outdoor skating rinks. But this is Canada and Quebec under Trudeau. I've said people say it's not one person destroying a country, but there's certainly a figurehead to the destruction of the country that we knew, the free and beautiful Canada, and it's turned into.
That's why I was applauding the freedom truckers or whatever during COVID. That was the only time that I felt like a true resistance against all of his BS during COVID.
It was. I mean, the thousands and tens of thousands of people who attended that protest said enough is enough. It started an international movement, and that was the embarrassment on the Trudeau regime. Is like, holy crap! It's not just nationally embarrassing. It spawned international embarrassment.
Well,
and what do tyrants and not megalomaniacs, not the right word, but narcissists do when they get embarrassed? They lash out, and that's exactly what he did.
Didn't Trudeau just get caught with cocaine on a plane and they couldn't leave? Can you embellish on that?
That's a rumor.
Is that a rumor? Well, I want to know. I heard on Bongino too.
They apparently some Indian official alleged it. I'll go with. I don't need to go with
Is
rumors.
this you backing up Trudeau?
No, this is
Are you a Fed? Are you Fed? Mountie!
I knew it. There's enough good reason to hate him. I don't need to rely on the unsubstantiated ones. 2 times ethics breaching. Even the fact that he dressed in blackface, I could forget that because that's 20
nobody
years ago.
talks about it.
No, well,
Great costume,
the
by the way.
media
I'm
covered
totally
up for
sure.
that. Like the media had those pictures, and this is the same media that he funds to the tune of $1.2 billion a year for the CBC and Radio Canada. It's amazing. It's amazing when you understand the entire system. You subsidize, government media, CBC, Radio Canada. You then, what's the word when you bail out the print media like he did in 2018 with $600 million. Then you indirectly bail out all of the digital media with COVID ads, government ads, and you say, toe the line or we pull these ads like they did, what's his name, Pablo Rodriguez, Minister of Heritage, talking about the new link tax, where they said, we're going to charge Google and Facebook a tax to link through a source to the original source. And then Google and Facebook said, well, we're not paying that tax, so we're just going to stop linking it. Pablo Rodriguez, the Minister of Heritage, says, well, we're going to cut off federal advertising dollars to Facebook and whatever the other one was, Google. And they're like, well, good, we don't need it. It represents like less than 1% of our revenue. Piss off. But there's a lot of other outlets out there that the government advertising does not represent 1% of the revenue. It actually is that off of which they subsist, and they bend the knee and carry the water for the government. It's how you capture a system. It's been captured.
Isn't that what Stalin did?
Sorry?
Stalin did the same thing with like propaganda and like really owning the media and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, then how does it?
The Bolsheviks did that too. Yeah.
You talked about the recent legislation that they passed regarding podcasters and digital media.
Yeah, that is under the banner of the Online Streaming Act, which governs the internet the way Canadian government governs radio and television. So you got an administrative body called the CRTC. It's the Canadian Radio Telecommunications Commission. They govern radio and television. Require it has Canadian content. You pay your dues if you're not, and it made sense to some extent, the infrastructure of radio and television, although some people said like the idea of Canadian content, ensuring it has a certain amount of Canadian content makes no sense whatsoever, especially from Trudeau, who says there's no Canadian culture on its own. Now they govern the internet with that. It was only intended to govern the streaming platforms, Netflix, Hulu's, etc. And then it ends up governing individual social media accounts. And then they say, well, how's this going to be implemented? And everyone's like, we have no idea. We're going to ask the CRTC, the administrative body, to set the limits of how they're going to apply this law. It's like, if you guys know the Chevron decision in the States, which is administrative bodies to some extent can govern them, set their own rules or their own interpretation. The States is going and pulling it back and saying administrative bodies do not get to govern, they don't get to legislate, they don't get to interpret their own rules. In Canada, it's going the other way. Here's CRTC, set your own parameters as to how you're going to govern and go hog wild. And they said, we're going to apply these rules to podcasters with annual revenue of $10 million or more for now. Wow. So that'll apply to Spotify, Podbean. If Joe Rogan were independent, it would apply to Joe Rogan. But anybody who thinks it's going to stay at $10 million and not go to 5 to 2 to 1,
right.
and then to everybody, you're living a pipe dream. Welcome to the Income Tax Act.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so when did this really go off the rails for Canada? Was it always a hardcore liberal place, or did that change when Trudeau was in there and they captured the media? Because I sort of remember it being as a more docile, open, friendly place before that.
The Steelman argument is they've always, I don't know when the Broadcasting Act, the Canada Broadcasting Act came into effect, but it was always the case that the federal government would do this.
Yeah.
But it went into high gear after Trudeau came in 2015. 2016 was Bill C-16. That was the one that added gender identity and gender expression to the criminal code. That's when Jordan Peterson came out, he went from a freaking clinical psychologist to an internet superstar.
Yeah.
And he said, this is going to result in compelled speech. And I'm like, even back in the time, I'm like, not so fast, bad law, bad cases make for bad law.
Right.
Anyways, he was ahead of the curve there. But it started 2016 with that, and then just one piece of legislation after another. Then they tightened up gun laws, banned 1,500 types of what they call assault rifles after the Nova Scotia mass shooting, which occurred in COVID. They do this in the dead of the night under when COVID's going on, nobody knows what's going on. Right. Bans, legislation, pass it through in the dead of the night, and this is how you basically capture an entire country.
Should the U.S. seize ownership of Canada through peaceful means by saying, if you're in Canada and pissed off the way things are, self-identify as U.S. citizen and we'll back you?
Well, Tucker Carlson made the joke about invading Canada, and the media pretends that that's an actual...
I don't think we need to do that. I think a lot of Canadians would rather be American citizens, just stay right where you are and say, hey, would you rather abide by American laws? Have that, self-declare, and see how many people do it.
It's a bizarre thing, man. Canadians, a lot of them almost prefer, the safety of a prison.
Stockholm syndrome?
Well, I think they just prefer the safety of some sort of confined prison than the risk of the wild. I mean, it's the difference in the history and culture of America versus Canada.
What do you think of
How so?
15-minute cities coming to Canada? Is that going to happen, you think?
It's funny, I just did a car live stream with Chris Sky earlier today. The consensus is they're coming, but it's not going to be 15 minutes for your confinement. It's going to be 15 minutes for your efficiency and for your...
so your time, basically your time?
No, you can get everything. You don't... for convenience, you'll have your doctor's office close by.
Yeah, everything's right by you.
Yeah.
How scary would that be if you only have 15 minutes to go get your stuff? Talk about waiting for your wife. You're like, we don't have time. We don't
Just
have
go
time.
like that.
Right now.
So everyone should go back and watch, to the extent Chris Sky, this guy that I interviewed today, got it right, in Oxford where they're doing this, there are limitations as to how long you can leave your car idle. But once this all goes digitized, I mean, it'll be easy to make sure and just issue tickets if you break the law.
Well, yeah, or if they can remote, you're running your car outside the Wawa or the Tim Hortons coffee, and it's been running for 15 minutes, we're just going to shut that off. And now you don't get to drive for 15 minutes as a punishment.
Yep.
Wait until they start measuring the carbon emissions based on your purchases with your credit card, and they're going to be able to do all of this digitally.
CBDC, social score.
That's where I was going. They're trying it already in Canada. It was the Bank of Canada had a questionnaire. They were, what do they call it when you ask the public for feedback? Yeah, feedback. What do you think about digital currency? I want the government that already froze bank accounts without having total control of them to have a digital currency.
Right.
You gotta be batshit crazy.
Yeah.
That's the hill to die on. That's where everything goes away. If we actually let that happen, that's where everything is screwed.
Well, my hill, I won't say my hill to die, but my red line in the sand when I said if Quebec passed a law that removed parental supremacy from the Youth Protection Act, I told my wife, that's going to be my red line in the sand, and they did it. They amend a law to say it's no longer the parent that decides what's in the best interest of the child. It's the administrative state that does so.
Yeah.
So if your kid comes and says, I want a jibby jab or I want HRTs, and the parents say no, and then the kid goes and gets the government involved, and they say, well, it's not what the parent wants anymore, it's what we think is the best. I said, you can't raise a kid here. The kid belongs to the state.
Exactly.
Right.
That's my red line.
That's what's happening in California right now.
So is there a chance, when is Trudeau up for election?
Yeah, when is he done?
The next official election needs to be called by 2025 because he's got the support of Jagmeet Singh, who is a bigger snake than Trudeau, at least because Trudeau lets us know who he is. So that's technically the next time for a federal election. It could be called earlier if there's what we call a vote of no confidence, where the government basically, other members of the government say, you don't have the support of even us, trigger a new election. They could do it.
How likely is it to happen?
It's looking pretty good.
I don't know.
Well, not for them.
Apparently, it hasn't gotten bad enough yet for Canadians, so it's got to get a little bit worse before.
Wow.
Is there a formidable candidate or competitor, somebody like a Trump or like Josh Hawley?
There's a new guy.
Yeah, is there a
Pierre
rebel anywhere?
Poilievre?
Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Poilievre.
he's criticized as being the Trump of Canada.
Nice.
I have my issues with him. He's definitely the lesser of the evils and the better alternative. I ran for the People's Party of Canada, so my ideological loyalty lies there. He's definitely the better alternative.
Right.
I don't. He's a fair weather politician in my view, but he's the lesser of the evils for the time being.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, I hope something changes soon because I'm so tired of seeing that guy.
Yeah.
Just ruining. Yeah,
I just
yeah.
see his face and I just get mad.
just wanna
and I just stay in
punch
the
it.
can for a couple more minutes.
I look at that picture with this girl. I say he smells bad. He has to smell bad in real life. And I had someone on who was in the same room as I said, "What did he smell like?" And she's like, "He didn't smell bad." So,
Oh, great.
olfactory sense.
Hate
No,
him.
I hate the fact that I hate him as much as I do because hate is a consuming
It's
force.
such a strong word, yeah.
But he's destroyed Canada.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the reason why you're here now.
Indeed.
His policies.